We're back on Most Buffalo with a live look at the Tampa Bay area. Florida is in its final hours before Hurricane Milton roars ashore. The monster storm shifted slightly, now tracking towards Sarasota, just south of Tampa. But of course, the entire state is still in that hurricane's path. Right now, you can see on some of these live cameras, heavy rain, winds, and dark, eerie clouds are taking over some of those skies. And as the storm makes its way to the Tampa Bay coast, there are a lot of weather terms being thrown around that you might not understand. Storm Team 2 meteorologist Jennifer Stanonis and Dan Russell join us now from the Weather Center to help you better understand this storm. Dan and Jen.
Absolutely. You know, Jen, you just go back 2 days ago, 2 days.
Yes.
We were still talking about a tropical storm.
And the rapid intensification.
One of those terms.
We were watching it very early Monday morning. I mean, it was a Cat 1, went to a Category 5 so quickly. The models were even having a hard time keeping up with it.
It truly was remarkable how fast this storm did intensify. Of course, then yesterday it weakened. It went through what we call an eye wall replacement cycle, which is very classic when you have especially these super intense storms. So it briefly weakened, went back to a Cat 5. And then now, this is where we stand. This is the latest on Milton. Now, if you've been watching over the past couple of days, we've been showing you this storm, and it was almost beautiful to see when it was just north of the Yucatan.
That definition of that eye wall when it was a Cat 5, it's incredible, but also terrifying as this beast is heading even closer to the Florida coastline.
The reason why we mentioned that, notice though, is we are taking a look at Milton, and we mentioned the fact that we were expecting some weakening on approach. Well, notice we no longer have that eye being shown here with the satellite. So again, showing signs that this storm, yes, it is weakening. It is still, though, a monster of a storm. I mean, this is live radar here, and you can see that buzzsaw of a spin.
But at least it did drop from a Cat 4 to now a Category 3 hurricane just in the last, 15 minutes.
And so we have a Category 3 storm now. We're talking storm surge, potential flooding, rain,
tornadoes,
and that's where I'm getting at right now.
More than 50 tornado warnings across central and southern Florida.
Already today, over 50 tornado warnings in this portion of Florida. And a lot of it was this band right here. You get those outer bands, of course, a lot of rotation in the atmosphere, but an intense band like that, a lot of tornadoes and some of the video too.
Yes, and still producing some tornado warnings there along the coastline, the eastern coast of Florida. So we're continuing to track this. Look at this, eye is getting so close to Sarasota now. So
here it is. Here's Tampa Bay. Here's Tampa up here. We've been tracking this because Tampa Bay in general is very susceptible to storm surge. Now, thankfully, at least for Tampa Bay, not good news for, of course, areas south of Tampa Bay, but now looks as though the center of the storm, which is right here, and this is all important, is going to make landfall somewhere just south of Tampa Bay. In fact, here is the latest on Milton. It has dropped to that Category 3 status with 125 mile per hour maximum sustained winds, moving to the northeast at about 17 miles per hour.
So it's speeding up a little bit is how it appears. So we might have landfall a little sooner now is what it's looking like, timing after about 10 p.m.
I was going to say 10, 10:30, somewhere around there is where we expect that center to be
potentially
crossing inland. And you can see that here with the track again. There's Tampa Bay right there. There's Milton. This is the latest update at 8 p.m. We're still expecting a Category 3 hurricane and more than likely a Category 3 hurricane, which still makes it a major hurricane making landfall here in this portion of Florida.
And something else that we've been tracking and talking about over the last couple of days is that it could still maintain its Category 1 strength as it moves just south
all
of
across the state.
And yes, all across. So this is what we're looking at, and as we're talking about this, Dan, as it continues to look like it's going to track a little bit further south now, south of Tampa. That's now where we're seeing the largest storm surge, about 10 to 15 feet now to include Sarasota and down toward just north of Fort Myers. But still, Tampa and Fort Myers could see about storm surge 6 to 10 feet.
Yes.
That is destructive.
That is very similar to what we saw during Helene in Tampa Bay just 2 weeks ago, and you saw all the debris that was already there on the roadway. So they're expecting similar storm surge there. Now, of course, where I think we're going to see catastrophic storm surge is now just south and around Sarasota. We got Venice Beach here as well. The reason for that, that's the right front quadrant. That's where you have the winds onshore driving all that water to the shoreline and ultimately inland.
And then even the flooding rains, we have flood warnings already for many spots across central Florida, and a foot plus of rain expected for some of these rainfall totals, even inland. So this is just a destructive hurricane that is going to impact a large portion of Florida, not just along the coast.
And we've been mentioning the fact that here we are, we're taking a look at all the hurricane strikes here in the Gulf of Mexico, from a Category 1 all the way up through a Category 5. Of course, we haven't had too many Category 5s, only 3, Andrew, Camille, and Michael. But notice the area of the coast where we haven't even had a Category 1 hurricane make landfall. And that's where ultimately Milton is heading. So generally speaking, we don't really know how the infrastructure is going to react there.
We haven't seen it since at least 1950.
It is definitely going to be a rough night indeed for portions of Florida. And then look at this. This is the actual climatology of the hurricane season. The peak is roughly September 10th. We're still sitting in the hurricane season, Courtney. So we still have potentially another month and a half or so where we're going to be keeping an eye on the tropics.
All right, Dan and Jen, thanks so much. Really, really great information and insight on Milton. Now we've